Sunday, 12 March 2006, 4 p.m, the Brass Handles pub, Salford. Two teenagers in puffer jackets push through the swing doors, 9mm pistols already up. 6 deafening shots later, the bar floor is slick with blood, the killers are disarmed with their own weapons, and a quiet football Sunday has detonated into the most infamous pub shootout Greater Manchester has ever seen. Salford's Brass Handles thrums with low-stakes normality. Red vinyl booths packed with families, Sky Sports commentary fizzing above the optics, the smell of roast potato crisps fighting stale lager. On the TVs, Manchester United are easing past Newcastle, and every time Rooney feints, the whole bar jerks in sympathetic motion. It feels like any other matchday afternoon, except that 2 young men from Moss Side are pacing outside with 9mm automatics in their waistbands, and nobody in the pub knows their names yet. At a battered snooker table near the back sits 27-year-old David Totton, Salford hard case with a talent for violence, nursing a pint beside his mate Aaron Travers. Totton's sudden decision to drink here, Bobby Speirs' local, has unsettled the older security boss, a private turf insult that festers into paranoia. Weeks of needle, a nightclub doorway snub, and the whisper that Totton is edging onto Speirs' protection patch have crystallized into a £10,000 murder contract. The puppeteers are scattered. Speirs lounges in a £2,000 executive box at Old Trafford, half-time pint in hand, phone never leaving his palm as he relays last-minute instructions. Outside the pub, veteran fixer Ian McLeod waits in a battered Ford Mondeo, engine ticking, double parked, ready to nudge his teenage gunman out of the passenger seat the moment the all-clear pings through. Inside, Constance Black Widow Howarth perches at the bar, line of sight to the snooker room, thumbing silent texts. Target 3 booths back, wearing grey hoodie. Crowd thick, no door staff. Everything else, the 6 shots, the jammed Beretta, the grass verge executions will unfold in barely 30 seconds. But right now, the mood is just football, foam, and false security. A Sunday session poised on the lip of catastrophe. The pub door slams so hard the optic bottles rattle. Richard Austin storms in first, black puffer unzipped far enough to clear the muzzle of his 9mm. He fires on the move, bang, bang, bang. Glass and plaster dust explode from the snooker room doorway, while David Totton lurches backwards, blood already blooming through the grey hoodie he wore to blend into a Sunday crowd. A half-second behind him comes Carlton Alvarenga. He squeezes once, then fate slips a cog. The Beretta stovepipes, the slide sticks half open with the empty brass still peeking out. A textbook jam that turns a 2-man execution team into panicked prey. Chaos detonates. Someone heaves the battered snooker table onto its side. Pint glasses detonate against the wood as a dozen regulars use it like a riot shield. Aaron Travers, faster than thought, throws himself across Totton and takes 2 rounds in the shoulder and thigh meant for his friend. A barmaid dives behind the fruit machine. Rooney's goal celebration freezes on the television while the Sky commentary keeps babbling, oblivious. By the time Austin empties his clip, he's surrounded. A brickie with forearms like scaffold clamps. The young gunman in a headlock, another drinker, wrenches the jammed Beretta from Alvarenga's hand. Shouts turn feral. Outside. Take it outside. Dragged through the foyer, they'd breezed through seconds earlier, the 2 teenagers stumble onto the patchy grass verge, fronting the Langworthy Road dual carriageway. Car tires hiss on wet asphalt. Somewhere a child in a passing Vauxhall Astra presses a face to the window. The guns change owners one final time. 2 flat cracks, nothing like the cinematic thunder inside, and both hitmen fold where they stand, bleeding into the chilly March turf. Inside, the air tastes of cordite and stale lager. 6 hot casings lie scattered across sticky carpet. A single jammed shell is wedged in Alvarenga's pistol, like a grim bookmark in events. Totton and Travers, white-faced, still conscious, are bundled into a silver people carrier that screeches away toward Hope Hospital. No one calls 999 about the shooting. Someone does, however, rip the pub's DVR from its ceiling bracket and vanish into the back alley before the first siren wails. 30 seconds from start to finish, a 6-round fusillade, 1 catastrophic misfeed, and 2 would-be assassins dead with their own hardware. The target lives, the witnesses clamp their lips, and Salford's most notorious pub has just earned its legend, 5-0 large on Totton's head. That was the figure passed around Salford's pubs in the weeks before the Brass Handles ambush, big enough to make seasoned hitters prick up their ears. Detectives would later pin the true fee closer to £10,000, cash Bobby Speirs handed fixer Ian McLeod, but in gangland folklore, the number swelled to £50,000, a price tag befitting the ego war that triggered it. A month earlier, Totton rocked up at a Manchester club, muscled the bouncers, and dropped Speirs' name to jump the queue. The doorman brought the older man outside. Speirs pretended not to recognize him, an ice-cold put-down witnessed by half the queue. Totton's response was pure needle. He began drinking in the brass handles, Speirs local most Sundays, parking his swagger on the spot where Speirs liked to hold court. In Salford etiquette that was a territorial slap, and the older man's paranoia spiked. Speirs' security crews taxed doors, car parks and small bars across Salford. Totton, a rising hard case from Little Holton, refused to pay a penny. Worse, he was luring younger lads away from Speirs' orbit. Allowing that insult to stand risked the whole extortion franchise, so the order went out: remove Totton, whatever it costs. £10,000 in cash moves from Speirs to McLeod. Street talk inflates it to £50,000 by the time it hits Moss Side. McLeod, 43 and semi-retired but still a Doddington shot caller, pockets a slice and presses two teenage debtors, Richard Austin and Carlton Alvarenga, to earn their freedom with a gun. Constance, Black Widow, Howarth, is posted at the bar, texting table positions. Speirs himself lounges in a £2,000 executive box at Old Trafford, nursing a half-time pint and dictating tweaks over the phone, an alibi wrapped around a command post. Austin and Alvarenga never expected a payout. Both owed McLeod serious money. The hit was the only way to wipe the slate. Evidence suggests McLeod had to push them out of his Mondeo when they balked at the pub door. Lambs hustled toward their own slaughter. When the smoke cleared, police had no witnesses, just two pay-as-you-go mobiles dropped beside the dead gunman. One top-up had been made with a supermarket loyalty card, tracing straight back to McLeod's circle and then to the man in the VIP box. Pride and turf set the price. A stray loyalty point paid the receipt. In Salford math, that is how £50,000 of street rumour, £10,000 of real cash, and a single act of public humiliation converged to turn a football Sunday into a blood-soaked legend. The shooting ends, but the crime scene lasts barely minutes. A regular unbolts the ceiling DVR, tucks the hard drive under a jacket and ghosts out the back alley. This is Salford. No one talks to the law, someone mutters, a mantra that spreads faster than the cordon tape. Before first responders can log the address, every camera feed is gone. Inside, the injured refuse cooperation. David Totton and Aaron Travers are wheeled into theatre but sign no statements, and every pint-glass witness suddenly went blind when the guns came out. Greater Manchester Police call it the city's impenetrable code of silence. The calendar will prove them right. A decade later, detectives still have no eyewitness testimony for the double homicide of Richard Austin and Carlton Alvarenga. Leads dry up so quickly that officers start chasing ghosts. One suspected robber, seen nursing a beer in the brass handles minutes before the ambush, drops completely off the map. Even his family can't say whether he's alive. The pub itself never recovers. Stripped license, smashed windows, then years of rot. Eventually the council bulldozes the shell, leaving an empty plot on the Langworthy Road as the only memorial to the 30-second gunfight that made it famous. With mouths closed and CCTV ripped out, detectives pivot to technology. Two pay-as-you-go phones abandoned beside the corpses become the prosecution's lodestar, but only for the conspiracy. Speirs, McLeod, and Howarth go down on call data alone. No jury ever hears who squeezed those final roadside triggers. The murders remain officially unsolved, an open file labeled brass handles that gathers dust, waiting for a witness brave enough to speak. The first officers reach the brass handles to find two corpses, two hot shell casings, and two pay-as-you-go mobiles abandoned on the grass. No CCTV, no statements, no gun left at the murder scene. In Salford terms, that should have been case closed. Instead, a pair of budget handsets became the opening move of an 18-month forensic chess match. One handset had been topped up in a corner shop with a supermarket loyalty card. A single swipe gave detectives a name, an address, and 6 weeks of till receipt dates that mapped perfectly onto pre-hit planning meetings. Call data spiraled out from that top-up like a spider web. At the center sat Ian McLeod, doughty elder of the Doddington crew. A level higher, and ringing in at kickoff, halftime and full-time, was a phone geolocated inside an Old Trafford executive box. Bobby Speirs was supposed to be enjoying Manchester United's 2-0 stroll. Instead, he spent the match trading whispered instructions with McLeod and Constance Black Widow Howarth in the bar. Analysts married the call pattern to petrol receipts. motorway toll timestamps, and cell site hops that shadowed McLeod's silver Mondeo from Moss Side to Salford and back again. Each breadcrumb on its own was flimsy. Together they formed a route map of the conspiracy, down to the minute the hitmen were shoved out of the car. Howarth's phone betrayed her next. 24 texts left her clutch bag in the brass handles that afternoon. 17 went straight to McLeod, 5 to the number in the plush VIP box. Content was encrypted, but the timing mirrored every key movement inside the pub. That pattern was enough. Prosecutors would later tell the jury the messages were as loud as gunshots. While Salford closed ranks, Speirs rolled his dice and bolted for Benidorm, trading rain for rooftop pools. It bought him 2 quiet years. Then a European arrest warrant snapped shut. Spanish police lifted him on the balcony, still shirt off and sun-oiled, and flew him back to Manchester to face a murder conspiracy charge carrying a 23-year minimum. The final board looked like this: Speirs, McLeod, and Howarth. 3 life sentences built almost entirely on digital ghosts. No eyewitness, no murder weapon, just a loyalty card, a pair of battered Nokias, and a detective squad willing to play the long game while their opponents gambled on silence. The roadside killings of Austin and Alvaranga remain officially unsolved, but the architects of the plot learned the hard way. In modern gangland, every phone call is another chess piece waiting to be taken. They called it a ghost evidence trial. No CCTV, no eyewitnesses, no murder weapons in the dock. Just a fist-sized bundle of call data spreadsheets, loyalty card receipts, and cell site maps that detectives slid onto the clerk's table like a chess grandmaster's final move. The gallery was packed with gang watch officers and grief-hardened families, the public benches almost empty, Salford's street code extending even to the public gallery. By May 2007, at Courtroom 3, Ian McLeod, 43, stone-faced in a charcoal suit, occupied the high-security glass dock beside Constance's Black Widow. Howarth, 38, in a monochrome trouser suit that matched her expression. Prosecutor Andrew Stubbs QC wasted little time. The hard drive was gone, the witnesses silent, but the phones kept talking, he told jurors, stabbing a finger at a blown-up image of the top-up receipt that tied a pay-as-you-go handset to McLeod's alias. 96 calls between McLeod, Howarth, and a number that cell-sighted inside the brass handles on 12 March. 43 more to a handset mast pinging at Old Trafford, evidence that turned silence into an admission, as Stubbs phrased it. After a 4-week hearing, the foreman stood, voice steady, and delivered guilty on conspiracy to murder. Mr. Justice Madison handed down life terms, 21-year minimum for McLeod, 20 for Howarth, describing the pair as directors of an assassination by remote control. McLeod blinked twice. Howarth mouthed liars at the press bench. Neither looked at the families of the dead gunmen seated 3 rows behind. Bobby Speirs watched the verdicts from a rented apartment in Benidorm, the Mediterranean sun bleaching the TV picture. 2 days later, Greater Manchester Police triggered a European arrest warrant. Speirs shrugged it off, posting Instagram photos of poolside breakfasts. He lasted 14 months. Escorted from Madrid in cuffs, Speirs cut a stockier figure than the urbane security boss of law, all Costa belly and courtroom tan, one reporter quipped. The prosecution replayed the Old Trafford call log, half-time 16-1, a 12-second instruction to McLeod, full-time 17:49, a curt job, digital fingerprints of command. Defense barrister Michael Shorrock QC spun an alibi of football chatter, but the jury took 6 hours to disagree. Life. Minimum 23 years, ruled Mr. Justice Madison, calling the contract a gangland PowerPoint, planned from a Premier League executive box. Speirs smirked, winked at a supporter wearing a Paul Massey t-shirt, and was led downstairs to the van that would take him to HMP Manchester. Outside, Detective Chief Inst. Jeff Wattham conceded the obvious. We still don't know who fired the fatal roadside shots. Phone science had caged the architects, but the grass-verge gunman or gunman remained a spectre, insulated by the same silence that had ripped out the pub's DVR. The murder file stayed open, stamped brass handles, unresolved, but in Courtroom 3, the long game was over. The state had taken the kings, the streets could keep their ghosts. The brass handles never reopened. Within 4 years, the council bulldozed the fire-damaged shell, leaving a weedy square of tarmac on the corner of Edge Hill Close and Fitzwarren Street. Dog walkers still detour round it. Every March, someone ties a cheap bouquet to the lamppost that once lit the pub door, a handwritten card repeating the local mantra, 6 shots, 1 jam, 2 dead. Estate kids retell the story, the way older generations swap ghost tales, how the gun jammed, how the pub fought back, how nobody ever grasped. YouTube mini-docs rack up hundreds of thousands of views, each adding fresh varnish to the myth, while the official murder file labeled Brass Handles Unresolved sits open but untouched in GMP's cold case room. David Totton walked out of hospital draped in street kudos. In 2011, he was jailed for handling stolen cars, then popped up a year later in the stolen RD surveillance that ended with police marksman killing Anthony Granger in Colchester. A 2019 public inquiry pinned the blame squarely on GMP tactics, but Totton's legend as the man who survived Brass Handles and the Granger op only deepened. Paul, Mr. Big Massey, longtime ally of Bobby Speirs, tried to broker peace between Ordsall and Little Hulton crews. On 26 July 2015, a masked gunman riddled him with an Uzi outside his home. His funeral, policed by armed units, saw white horses draped in Manchester United flags and a cortege that shut down Salford for hours, proof that the Brass Handles fault line was still cracking open nearly a decade on. Speirs, McLeod and Howarth work prison jobs, file the odd hopeless appeal, and wait. Speirs cannot even apply for parole until 2032. McLeod faces 2028 at the earliest, Howarth 2027. None has ever named the person or people who turned the 9mm on Austin and Alvarenga outside the pub. Legal certainty ends where the grass verge begins. The pub taught Greater Manchester Police that a ripped-out DVR and a silent bar don't end an investigation. A supermarket loyalty card, a handful of cell site pings and 96 silent text messages built a prosecution that eyewitnesses wouldn't. In modern gangland, the street code might still hush mouths, but it can't hush metadata. And the jammed Beretta? Detectives keep it in the evidence store, slide locked open, cartridge still stovepiped. They show it to trainees as a reminder that a £10,000 hit can be undone by a 20p spring, and that sometimes an entire city's folklore begins with a single mechanical hiccup.